Let me tell you something, and I want you to really hear me on this one. Not just listen, hear me. Right now, somewhere, you've got a drawer. Maybe it's a kitchen drawer. Maybe it's in your desk at work. Maybe it's a folder on your computer you haven't opened in 8 months. And inside that drawer is a statement, a 401k, a bank balance, something, and you won't look at it. You know it's there. You know you should look, but you don't. Because looking means thinking, and thinking means planning, and planning means admitting that the life you're living right now has an expiration date on it. Not you, the version of you that wakes up and goes to work every day. That version ends. And what's on the other side of that is either something beautiful or something terrifying. And the difference, I promise you this, the difference is what you do in the next few years. Not 20 years from now, now. I had a customer once. This was 1987, maybe 88. A man named Douglas Pratt. Dougie, we called him. Worked for Con Edison for 31 years. Good man, good worker. Showed up every day, fixed things, came home. He used to bring his work boots in every 6 months to get resoled because he walked maybe 10 miles a day on those routes. Size 11 wide foot, always wore through the left heel faster because he favored that leg from an old injury. I knew his feet better than his doctor did. Dougie retired on a Friday in October. I remember because he came into the shop that morning wearing new shoes. Not mine, some department store nonsense. And he had this grin on his face like a kid on Christmas. He said, "Sal, I'm done. 31 years and I'm free." And I shook his hand and I told him congratulations. And I meant it. 6 months later, Dougie's back in the shop. No grin. He's wearing the old boots again. He sits down in the chair, the green one by the window, if you've seen my shop, and he says, "Sal, I think I made a mistake. Not about retiring, about how he retired. He hadn't planned. He hadn't thought about what his money needed to do for the next 30 years, because he figured, like most people figure, that the pension and Social Security would handle it. And maybe it would have been fine, except his wife Jeannie needed a hip replacement that insurance only half covered. And his roof had been leaking for 2 years, and he'd been putting it off. And suddenly, the math didn't math. That's what he said. "Sal, the math doesn't math." This was a man who'd worked since he was 17 years old. And in 6 months, the freedom he'd earned felt like a cage. Now here's the thing I want you to understand. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't have letters after my name. I fix shoes for a living. But I've been alive long enough, and I've sat across from enough people in that green chair to know that retirement isn't about the money. It's about the choices. And the choices you make in the 5 years before you stop working are worth more than everything you did in the 30 years before that. I believe that with my whole chest. So if I could start today, if I could rewind the clock and plan my retirement from scratch in 2026, here's exactly what I would do. And I'm telling you this not because I got it all right. I'm telling you because I got some of it wrong. And I watched a lot of people I loved get it wrong. And I don't want that for you. First thing before anything else, you sit down and you figure out, honestly, no lying to yourself, what your life actually costs. Not what you think it costs, what it actually costs. I'll give you an example. My friend Arthur Molinaro, Artie, he was a plumber, had his own business, did very well for himself. When Artie was getting ready to retire, his wife Marie asked him, "How much do we spend every month?" And Artie, God rest him, he was a beautiful man, but he could be thick. Artie says, "I don't know, 4,000, maybe 5?" Marie almost hit him with a skillet. It was closer to $9,000 a month. Because Artie wasn't counting the property taxes that came twice a year, the car insurance, the twice-a-week dinners at Carmine's on Court Street, the trips to Atlantic City, the subscriptions, the this, the that. He was counting the feeling of what he spent, not the reality. And look, I get it. Nobody wants to sit down with a pile of bank statements and a calculator. It feels like punishment. But you know what's actual punishment? Running out of money when you're 78 and your knees don't work anymore. That's punishment. So here's what I'd do. For 1 month, just one, I'd write down every single dollar that leaves my hands, every coffee, every bill, every subscription you forgot you signed up for. I don't care if you use one of those phone apps or a notebook from the dollar store. Just track it. Because once you see where your money goes, you can decide where it should go. And that decision, that one decision, is the foundation of everything else I'm about to tell you. And let me tell you something else about Artie. Once Marie showed him the real numbers, once he actually looked, he found almost $1,200 a month that was just leaking. Gym membership he hadn't used since the Reagan administration. 3 different streaming services. A storage unit in Red Hook that had been holding his mother-in-law's furniture for 6 years, and she'd been dead for 4 of them. $1,200 a month. That's $14,000 a year. That's money that could have been working for him instead of disappearing into nothing. But he didn't know because he never looked. Don't be arty. Look. You know what else I do? And this one's going to sound old-fashioned, but I've earned the right to be old-fashioned. I'd kill every debt I had, every single one. I'd go after it like it owed me money, which in a way it does, because every dollar you're paying in interest is a dollar you're handing to someone else instead of keeping for your future. I remember, this was the early 70s, I had a customer named Reggie Thompson. Reggie was a bus driver, MTA, good, steady job. But Reggie had a habit. Every time Sears had a sale, Reggie was there. New tools, new jacket, something for the house, all on credit. He'd come into my shop wearing brand new shoes he bought on a store card, and I'd think, Reggie, you're buying shoes you can't afford from a store that doesn't know your name, when I'm right here and I'd give you a deal. But that wasn't really the point, was it? The point was Reggie was building a life on borrowed money. And borrowed money has a cost that sneaks up on you like a slow leak in a pipe. You don't notice it day to day, but over the years, that leak rots the whole foundation. By the time Reggie retired, he was still paying off a car loan, 2 credit cards, and a home equity line he'd taken out to fix his kitchen. His retirement check, which should have been his freedom, was already spoken for before it hit his account. Reggie spent the first 5 years of his retirement working part-time at a hardware store. Not because he wanted to, because the debt demanded it. That's not retirement, that's a shift change. Now listen to me. If you've got a mortgage with a low interest rate, fine, that's a different conversation. But credit cards, car payments, store credit, personal loans, you burn those down before you retire. You find the one with the highest interest rate, and you throw every spare dollar at it. And when it's dead, you take that same money and you throw it at the next one. Some people call it the avalanche method. I call it common sense. Get angry at your debt. Treat it like an enemy, because it is one. And here's a trick I learned from watching Marie, Artie's wife. The woman was brilliant with money. She said, every time you pay off one debt, pretend that payment still exists. Just move it to the next debt. So, If you were paying $300 a month on a credit card and you kill that card, you don't suddenly have $300 extra for fun. You take that $300 and slam it onto the next bill. She called it the wave. You ride it until everything's paid off. Simple, brutal, effective. Now here's where it gets tricky, and this is where I see people make the biggest mistakes. How you save matters just as much as how much you save, maybe more. I'll tell you a story. I had two customers. I'm going to call them the Ferraro brothers because that was their name, and they're both gone now, so they won't mind. Dominic and Patrick Ferraro. Both worked good union jobs, MTA and sanitation, respectively. Both made about the same money their whole careers. Both started saving in their 30s, which, by the way, is already later than you should start, but that's a different video. Here's where they split. Dominic, Dommy, he put everything into his traditional retirement account at work. Every year, maximum contribution, got the tax deduction, felt great about it. Smart, right? Patrick did something different. Patrick split his money. Some went into the regular account, sure, but he also put money into what I now understand people call a Roth account, the kind where you pay your taxes today and the money grows, and you never pay taxes on it again. And Patrick also kept some money in a regular investment account, not retirement, just a brokerage account he could touch whenever he needed to. Fast forward to retirement. Dommy had more money on paper. He was proud of that number. He used to bring the statements into the shop and show me. I didn't understand half of it, but I nodded. But here's what happened. Every single dollar that came out of that account, Uncle Sam was standing right there with his hand open. Every withdrawal taxed. And not just income tax. It pushed him into higher brackets for his Medicare premiums. It affected what he paid for everything. Dommy used to say to me, "Sal, I saved all this money and the government is eating me alive." He wasn't wrong. Patrick, meanwhile, had less on paper but more flexibility. He could pull from the Roth account, no taxes. He could pull from the regular account, different tax treatment. He could mix and match depending on what year it was, what he needed, what made sense. One year he needed a new roof. He pulled from the Roth. Didn't bump up his income, didn't affect his premiums. Clean withdrawal. Patrick played chess. Dommy played checkers. Now, I'm not saying Dommy was stupid. Dommy did better than 90% of people because at least he saved. But the how matters. And what I'd do today, if I was starting fresh, is I'd look very carefully at where I was putting my money. I'd maximize one of those health savings accounts if I had access to one. My daughter Lucia tells me that's one of the best deals in the tax code, and she's sharper than me on this stuff. I'd think hard about whether a Roth makes sense for my tax bracket. I'd talk to someone who knows numbers, a CPA, a financial planner, somebody, because this stuff is too important to guess at. You don't guess when you're cutting leather for a shoe. You measure twice. Same thing with your money. And let me tell you something else while we're here. If your company, your employer, offers to match your retirement contributions and you're not taking that, that's money on the table. That's someone saying, hey, for every dollar you put in, I'll put in 50 cents. And you're saying, no thanks. That's insanity. You take the match. Always. I don't care if you have to eat rice and beans for a month. You take the match. It's the closest thing to free money you'll ever see in your life. And I say that as a man who's lived through the Depression. I know what free money looks like, and I know what a missed opportunity looks like. Don't miss that one. Now, this next one. This one is close to my heart because I watched it nearly destroy someone I cared about. My neighbor, a woman named Patricia Kwan, Patty, she was a school teacher, taught third grade at PS 170 for 28 years, retired at 62, good pension, decent savings, should have been fine. But Patty got scared. Somewhere around 2008, 2009, when everything fell apart, the banks, the markets, all of it, Patty panicked. She called her financial person and said, sell everything, put it all in cash. I can't watch it go down anymore. And her advisor, who should have talked her off the ledge, who should have said, Patty, sit down, breathe, let's look at this together, did what she asked. So, Patty went to cash. In 2009, right near the bottom. You know what happened next? The market came back. It came back like a freight train. And Patty sat in cash watching it go up. And she was too scared to get back in because what if it crashed again? And by the time she finally put money back in, this was 2013, maybe 2014. She'd missed years of growth. Years. That decision, that one panic decision made on a Tuesday afternoon in March, cost her probably a couple $100,000 over the next decade. Money she could have used for travel, for her grandkids' college, for her own care when she got older. I'll tell you what I learned from watching Patty and from watching a lot of people go through that. Fear is the most expensive emotion you can have when it comes to money. More expensive than greed, more expensive than ignorance. Fear makes you sell when you should hold. Fear makes you hide your money under a mattress. And I say that as someone whose father literally hid money under a mattress when we first came to this country, so I understand the instinct. But the mattress doesn't beat inflation. The mattress doesn't grow. The mattress just sits there while the cost of bread goes up every year. So if I was planning my retirement today, I would not panic and go conservative too early. I wouldn't dump everything into bonds and CDS just because I'm getting closer to retirement. I'd keep a healthy amount in the stock market, in a diversified portfolio, not betting everything on one company like it's a horse race. Because my money needs to last 20, maybe 30 years after I stop working. And money that's just sitting in cash for 30 years is money that's slowly dying. It's like leather you don't treat. Looks fine for a while, then one day it cracks and you wonder what happened. What happened is you didn't take care of it. Now, and I want to be fair, I'm not saying take crazy risks. I'm not saying put your retirement fund into whatever the hot stock is this week. People come to me, well, they used to come to me when more people came, and they'd say, "Sal, should I put everything in Apple?" Or, "Sal, what about this Bitcoin thing?" And I'd say, "I'm a cobbler, not a stockbroker. But I'll tell you this, I've never seen a man who bet everything on one thing and didn't eventually lose sleep over it. Diversify, spread it around. Don't let fear make your decisions. Make a plan, stick to the plan. Adjust the plan when it makes sense, not when the news scares you. The news is designed to scare you. That's how they get you to keep watching. I want to talk about Social Security for a minute because I see so many people get this wrong, and it breaks my heart. You know my friend Vinny Agostino, Vinny the barber, 3 chairs, been cutting hair on 86th Street since Nixon was president. Vinny took his Social Security the minute he could, 62. He said, "Sal, what if I die at 65? Then I got nothing." And I understood his thinking. A bird in the hand, right? That's what his father told him. That's what my father told me. Take what you can when you can, because tomorrow isn't promised. And that's true. Tomorrow isn't promised. But here's what's also true. Most of us get a lot more tomorrows than we think. Vinny didn't die at 65. Vinny's 89, still cutting hair 2 days a week because he likes it, not because he needs to. But every single month for the last 27 years, Vinny's been getting a smaller check than he could have gotten if he'd waited. Every month for 27 years. You do that math and it'll make you sick. We're talking about maybe $700 a month less. Over 27 years, that's what? Over $200,000? $200,000 because of a decision he made in 15 minutes at a Social Security office on 4th Avenue. And I'll tell you something else. Vinny's wife, Carmela, she waited. She claimed at 70. And the difference in their checks, from the same kind of work, the same kind of life, the difference is like night and day. Carmela gets almost twice what Vinny gets. Twice. For the same lifetime of work. Because she waited. Now, I'm not saying everyone should wait. If you need the money, you need the money. If your health is bad, maybe it makes sense to take it early. If you've got a plan and the numbers work out better, taking it at 62 or 64, then fine. But if you're healthy and you can cover your expenses for a few more years through work or savings or both, waiting until 70 can mean a dramatically bigger check for the rest of your life. I've seen the difference, and I mean literally watched it play out with real people I know. Real people who sit in my shop and drink my coffee. And it's the difference between comfortable and tight, between choices and no choices. The lesson? Don't make a 30-year decision based on a 2-year fear. Last thing, and this might be the most important thing I say in this whole video. Taxes. I know. Nobody wants to talk about taxes. It's like talking about plumbing. Boring until something goes wrong, and then it's all you can think about. But here's what I've learned watching people retire over the decades. Taxes are the silent thief of retirement. People spend their whole lives saving money. Good for them. But they never think about the tax bill that's coming. And when it comes, it's like a punch in the stomach. You need a tax plan. Not just a retirement plan, a tax plan. When do you do conversions? When do you withdraw from which accounts? How do you keep yourself in a lower tax bracket? These aren't questions you figure out in April when you're sitting across from your tax person. These are questions you figure out years before you retire, because by April, it's too late. The year's already happened. You can't unwithdraw. You can't unconvert. You're just counting the damage. I had a customer, a real smart woman, Eleanor Cho. She was an engineer at Grumman for 30-some-odd years. And Eleanor told me something I never forgot. We were sitting in the shop. She was waiting for me to finish her daughter's communion shoes. And she said, "Sal, I don't mind paying my taxes. I mind paying taxes I didn't have to pay because nobody told me there was another way." And that stuck with me, because that's what happens to most people. They don't evade taxes, they overpay taxes because nobody helped them plan. Nobody sat them down and said, "Hey, if you move this money here instead of there, if you convert this account now instead of later, if you withdraw from this bucket first instead of that one, you could keep an extra $50, $60, $80,000 over the next 10 years. So, if I was starting today, I'd sit down with someone who understands tax planning. not just tax filing, but tax planning, and I'd build a map. Where is my money? What's taxable? What's tax-free? What should I convert now while I'm still working? What should I leave alone? These decisions, made well, can save you, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the life of your retirement. That's not a typo. Hundreds of thousands. I've seen it. I've watched it happen in both directions. People who planned and people who didn't. The ones who planned aren't eating fancier food. They're sleeping better. There's a difference. Now, I've been talking about money this whole video, and money matters. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. I grew up with nothing. I know what it feels like to count pennies, to worry about whether the electricity stays on, to go to bed hungry because there wasn't enough. Money matters. But I want to leave you with this, because if I only talk about dollars and accounts, I've missed the whole point. I'm 106 years old. I've buried 2 wives, rebuilt my shop from ashes, made shoes for 60 years, and I'm still here, still drinking my espresso every morning from the same pot. And I'll tell you, the retirement that works isn't just the one with enough money. It's the one with enough meaning. I've seen rich men retire and fall apart because they had nothing to wake up for. A man named Gerald used to come into the shop, big executive, beautiful suits, Italian leather shoes he didn't buy from me, but that's fine. Gerald retired with more money than God, and within a year, he was in my shop every other day, not to get shoes fixed, just to talk, because nobody at home needed him. Nobody at the office needed him anymore. He had all the money in the world and no reason to get dressed in the morning. That scared me more than being broke ever did. And then there was Dougie. Remember Dougie from the beginning? Dougie eventually figured it out. After that rough first year, after the money scare with Jean's hip and the roof, Dougie started volunteering at Habitat for Humanity. Used all those handyman skills he'd built at Con Edison. Fixed wiring, installed outlets, did the work he'd done his whole career, but now for families who needed it. He was happier swinging a hammer for free than he'd ever been collecting a paycheck, because retirement isn't the absence of work, it's the presence of choice. You choose what matters. You choose how to spend your time. You choose who to spend it with. So yes, get your money right. Track your spending. Kill your debt. Save smart. Don't panic. Plan your taxes. Do all of that. But also, And I mean this. Figure out who you want to be when the work stops. What are you going to do on a Tuesday at 10 in the morning? Who are you going to call? What are you going to build? Because I've sat across from 100 men in that green chair who had the money figured out and the life all wrong. And I've sat across from men who had modest means but a rich life. And I'll take the second one every time. Because the money is the floor, but the life you build on top of it, that's the house. And nobody wants to live in a house with a good floor and no walls. You've got time. Maybe not as much as you think, but you've got time. Use it. Start today. Not tomorrow, not next month, not when the kids are out of the house, not when the market settles down, not when you feel ready. Today. Pull out that statement you've been ignoring. Look at your debt. Call that financial planner you've been putting off calling. Sit down with your wife, your husband, your partner, whoever shares your life, and have the conversation you've been avoiding. Do one thing, just one thing today that your future self will thank you for. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how many more of these videos I'm going to make. I've said a lot over these years, and I've meant every word. But if this is the one that finally gets you to open that drawer and look at that statement and start making a plan, then it was worth every minute I spent sitting here talking to this camera. Now go take care of yourself. You deserve a retirement that isn't just survivable. It should be beautiful. Make it beautiful, and call your mother. That part's free.